Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Andy Walker, I love that intro.
I love it. Two
Love it.
guys in their early 50s, or
It's not the bit I love about it.
or the rock from our mate Alex Grohl.
I do enjoy a bit of Alex Grohl. It's one of my favorite artists. But what I like about it is, I don't know about you, but I do a lot of Zoom calls and online meetings and that sort of stuff. And it's just so nice to start a call and have the reminder that says, "This is the Missing Links Golf Show," just in case you forget where you are.
Well, I mean, your background really should give it away for those watching on YouTube.
Yes.
I have noticed you've changed your background today, and I was trying to figure out where in the world you are, and I can't quite put a finger on it.
Okay. Let me give you some clues and see if you can narrow it down.
Yeah.
So, and why I've chosen such a backdrop, because there is a reason. So I'll start off by saying that I am at a golf course in Texas.
Ah, Texas.
Mm.
There's a lot of golf courses in Texas.
There are a lot of golf courses in Texas. Let me narrow it further for you. I am at a golf course in San Antonio, Texas.
That doesn't really narrow it too much for me. I must admit, I'm not good on my geography when it comes to US cities and places. So
yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. I'm at the Oaks Golf Course in San Antonio, Texas.
Right.
Which, Andy Walker, you're still looking at me with a blank look on your face. The reason that I have chosen that is because, according to the PGA Tour schedule, the tournament that is about to start tonight, our time, is the Valero Open.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
The Oaks Golf Course, San Antonio, Texas.
Yep. Yeah, no, I probably should have known that, because I have watched the Valero Open a number of times, including a couple of because Jordan Spieth has won it twice, I think. It was one of his first wins. I remember him hauling out of a bunker could be
one of the bunkers right behind me. Who knows?
Exactly. Well, it was the 18th. What hole are you on? Do you know?
I'm on one of the holes. Not sure which one, to be honest. It was the
excellent.
It was the first option that came up on the Google search, because I didn't have a huge amount of time pulling this one together. But anyway, Andy Walker, there you go. So
yeah.
Do
you actually know where I
am? I initially thought that you were at the old course, but you're not.
No.
Because it's clearly a very different backdrop. But that burn that's running through the course is quite similar. I'm guessing that you. Oh, actually, it looks like. Is it Royal Liverpool?
No.
Oh, that's a shame. So you're probably at the venue for the Open Championship this year. Is my guess.
It's not far from St Andrews, I have to say, and I have been there, and we've talked about me being in the car park feeling quite ill on my trip to Scotland. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
the 18th at Carnasty.
Yes,
so,
there you go.
Yes,
there you go.
yes.
Very good. Yeah. It just definitely looks Scottish with the burn running through the course there. Very nice. Excellent start to an audio podcast there, Andy Walker. Just us talking about our Zoom background. So champagne work. Pilgrims, big one for you tonight. We are going to cover a few things. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the update for the month of March for the yearly championship that has been played and won. So we'll take you through those scores. We are then going to embark on the first episode of our series of golf myth busting, because I don't know about you, Andy Walker, but I really do hear some absolute tripe getting talked on the golf course from time to time.
Yeah, look, and it's quite interesting, because now with the advantage of having data to back up a lot of the decisions and a lot of the perspectives that people have. And a lot of them are just the old viewpoints of the game and how you should go about the game, which when you're looking, especially strokes gain data, you look at club fitting and all the rest. A lot of those old myths, I guess you would say, just that they don't stack up against modern data. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to go through them just to call them out and put them to bed once and for all.
You could even say that quite often they are a swing and a myth.
That is true. That is a really, really bad. Uh,
Sorry, Pilgrims. I enjoyed that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah. Oh, look, I enjoy a dad joke.
yeah.
Yeah, as does my 11-year-old son. To be honest with
Mm,
you, he actually has got a book of dad jokes that he pulls
nice,
out. So he's starting very early in life. So yeah,
nice.
I don't mind one, but that certainly
It's
wasn't
right
up
up there.
there. It wasn't up there in the top 10.
Okay.
It
Funnily
it
enough,
it may have made a top 10, but not the top.
who's to know? Funnily enough, speaking of the dad joke book, one Father's Day way back when, I was actually given a roll of dad joke toilet paper, Andy Walker. That was quite special.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
That's that's interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah. Anyway, there's a whole raft of lines that we could continue with there, but we won't. We'll move on. We'll move on, and let's go, Andy Walker, to the yearly championship. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, let's start with that.
So there were quite a few entries this
Did I win?
month. No. Um, that's not exactly a spoiler alert. You made 29 points as your best round. So
Yeah, which
didn't win.
was the second round of the New South Wales Senior Amateur Championships. And yeah, as we know, that wasn't my best effort when it comes to
No,
competition golf.
no, it wasn't. Having said that, you beat me because I put in an awe-inspiring 27-point round was my only competition round for the month. So
Mm.
neither of us figured in the top six to get any points to the yearly championship, which means, Andy Walker, that we are tied on 0 points apiece for
Mm.
the yearly
Mm.
championship. So there you
Well,
go.
I have actually beaten you both months, given like you were a DQ the first month of February and
Yep,
due to not putting in a card and then
it's not
having
actually a
a
DQ, but anyway, it's a DNP on here. Did not play.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well, it's a
correct.
DQ for the month of February.
It's a DNP. Let's
No,
not
it's a DQ.
let's not split hairs. Um, so no, we haven't really set the world alight thus far, but it's all going to turn around in April because we've got the Macquarie Cup where we're going to carve it up. So stay tuned on that one, Pilgrims. But enough about us. Let's get to the top six because this is where the points lie and interesting results. Andy Walker. We might start with sixth. In sixth or sixth, if you prefer, from the UK. From Australia, Benny Walker coming in with
Oh,
34 points. He was the winner in
last
February.
month's winner, yeah.
Yeah, 34 points. So he adds a further point to his yearly championship tally, takes him to 11 points, which is pretty solid after 2 months.
Nice. It's got to be tournament leader at this stage.
Stay tuned.
Right. Okay.
So in fifth place, scoring 2 points towards his yearly championship tally. Actually, this is consecutive fifths for Lucas Anderson. Way to go,
Nice.
Lucas.
Nice.
He scored 35 points, which bettered his 34 points in February. So nice work. That was good. I
So
think he
so
put
does
2 cards in actually for the month. I think he might have got 30 points on his first one and 35
so
on
does
the
that
second.
mean the competition is actually like getting better from the month of February to the month of March?
Not for Benny Walker, it isn't. So anyway, that's fine. So in fourth place, now this is interesting because we had a count back for third
Ooh,
and fourth.
okay. Yep.
I did get scorecards for both of these players, so I was actually able to do a count back, and it was the difference on the back nine between 20 points and 19 points. That was tight. It was tight. But losing that count back and falling into fourth place. So achieving 3 points to his yearly championship tally, 36 points, 19 on the back nine. Ted from Mollymook.
Oh, nice. Good one, Ted.
I thought so. Very good work. Pipping Ted, also with 36 points, but 20 on the back nine. In third place with 5 yearly championship points. Incidentally, both these players now are on 8 yearly championship points for the season so far. But with 36 points, 20 on the back nine was Big Kerrod from Dubbo.
Nice, Kerrod. Came home strong.
He did. Wet sail, which was awesome. And then there were 2 in second place, earning his first points in the yearly championship, 7 of them, in fact, in second place with 38 Stableford points. Great effort. Probably his best round in quite some time was Donny from Bathurst.
Nice. Good one, Donny.
Yeah. Ripped it.
It's a quality score.
Awesome. It is a good score. Round Bathurst as well. It's good. It's a good track.
Yeah, for sure.
Not the easiest country course going around. And you certainly don't want to bump one left off the 11th tee. Otherwise, you legitimately are in jail.
Yes. I do recall having played Bathurst a very long time ago now. Won't mention just how long ago, but it was a very long time ago that the jail was actually very close to a number of holes.
Yeah. We should do a comp in Bathurst one day. Actually, we should take the show on the road and go to Bathurst. That'd be good.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. But winning the month with 39 points, which is a great effort, backing up his second place in the month of February, coming in first place in the month of March, and therefore leading the yearly championship, is none other than James Armstrong representing England.
Nice.
Mm.
They're 2 great scores.
Some good golf, Pilgrims.
Yeah.
Some good golf from all of you lot, not necessarily from the 2 of us.
so second and a first. That's good. That's very good.
I would not be
started
surprised.
off the year strong.
Yeah.
Let's just see what winter brings.
Well, he's coming out of winter in the Northern Hemisphere, so summer.
Well, that's true.
But I would not be surprised if Sandy Wedge casts a very beady eye over Mr. Armstrong.
Okay. Looking forward to that.
See what happens.
Mate,
there you go.
Leave me alone for a little bit.
Unlikely with the Macquarie Cup coming up. So anyhow, that's great work. So keep the cards coming in, Pilgrims. It's really, really good to see. Great to see a bit of conversation in the Facebook page. And just a reminder, if you're listening to the show and you're not involved, all you need to do is jump on Facebook, go to our Facebook page, the Missing Links Golf Show, I would imagine it's probably called, given that that's the name of the podcast, and jump onto our private members group, which is the Missing Links Golf Show podcast, very creatively named. We'll need to approve your application, but we will do that without too much delay. And then you can join the fun, get involved in the banter, and submit your scores. You never know. At some point, if we manage to organise a sponsor, we will also have some prizes on offer. But don't hold your breath. It's going to happen. Mind you, if you're a business owner and you want to sponsor the show, get in touch. So there you go. That's the month of March, Andy Walker. What do you reckon?
It's competitive. Very competitive.
I think so.
I think we're going to have to get our act together if we even want to earn a point.
Yeah, I also agree. Yeah. So anyway, we can do it. We can absolutely. It's in us. I actually played 9 holes after work yesterday. Andy Walker and I sent you a little screenshot of that. I don't know if you had a look at that last night.
I did see that. Yes.
Yeah.
So what was your best round last year?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in terms of differential
or points, or how many points? What was your best Stableford score last year?
Probably about 38 points, I think, roughly. top of my head.
So your best for the year would not have won either February or March in the
True.
yearly championship.
Yeah. Which is why I didn't bother playing my best in March.
Excellent.
So, stating the obvious. Anyhow, enough sledging. Let's get into the topic at hand. I want to talk about myths, Andy Walker. I want to talk about myths. We've all heard them. We've all played with people who've got those one-liners and, tell you all the things that should happen and all of the, the cliches about the game and all the things that people believe. I think it's time to put the blowtorch to some of them. What do you think?
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So I reckon a good place to start is one of my favorites. When you're standing on the tee on a par four, might be a tight par four, might be a short par four. It's a time when you really want to hit the fairway and you want to be sensible about your course management. And someone will say, you know what, Andy Walker, you really need to take a 3-wood or a long iron off the tee because it's better for accuracy. You're more likely to hit fairways. Ever heard that one?
I have heard that one. May have muttered that once or twice myself.
I think I've heard you say that. Well, I disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's necessarily true. Look, it could be true, and everyone's different, right? So let me give you that caveat. It could be true. You might be someone who's particularly accurate with your 3-wood and you spray your driver. If that's you, sure, take the 3-wood every day of the week. But let's just say you're the average kind of player. I don't believe it's true. And in fact, I think all you're doing is you're costing yourself distance unnecessarily.
Yeah, look, and I would agree with that. I would say on average, that is the case. I know that certainly where I am at the moment with my game, my driver and fairway are just not in a good spot. And I think we saw that certainly in the New South Wales Senior Amateur Championship, where I played my first round at Pacific Dunes and took driver most of the time, and we all know where that ended up. And then the second round at Nelson Bay, I actually decided to leave the driver in the bag for most of the round. And I just used my 3 utility and I absolutely drilled my 3 utility around the course. And the only 2 times I hit my driver were on the 9th and the 18th, and both times ended up a very, very, very long way right. But I think that's a technical issue that I have at the moment. And I would say when I'm playing well and all other things being equal, I agree with what you're saying. I would take a driver the vast majority of the time. But yeah, as I said, I think that this one I agree with most of the time, but I think there are certain times where I think it's a better option to take. Certainly for me, the 3 utility. Yeah, when you're struggling with those 2 clubs.
I think you are kind of the exception that proves the rule to a degree. And that is because you're in a situation at the moment where you're actually battling with your driver, like legitimately you've got a few issues with that club in your bag. And I think if you're in that situation, then absolutely take the 3-wood, take the utility iron, take the hybrid, whatever the case may be.
And you know what it is? It's the fact that I'm actually making some pretty fundamental swing changes.
Yeah.
And it is, as we all know, it's easier to be hitting short irons, the shorter end of the bag, and to be, to implement swing changes with the shorter end of the bag than what it is for the longer end of the bag. And it takes the longest, really, certainly with driver and 3-wood, or 4 fairway as I've got, to be able to consistently implement those swing changes in tournament play than what it is, say, with the lower end of your bag. So that, it's a very specific time for me that this is the case, that I think the 3 utility is a better option. However, once these swing changes that I've got, well, once they're implemented and grooved, then it'll be a different kettle of fish.
Totally agree. One other scenario that I would also put in here as a caveat is where there is a hole where there is a hazard or danger at your driver distance
Yeah.
that a shorter club, such as a 3-wood, 4-wood, 5-wood, utility iron, etc., would not get you to that danger.
Yep. Yeah. And
But
you look at
that,
something like, say Carnoustie, which we spoke about
mm,
previously. There are
mm,
several holes, and it sort of links golf in general, where those little water hazards run across the fairways at driver distance,
mm.
and there's also the little pot bunkers and all the rest. So in order to have a more strategic approach, I think that, yeah, playing to the fat part of the fairway and away from those hazards is a smart move.
And that is all true. But that's not quite what we're talking about here with this myth, which is about you hit more fairways with a fairway wood or a
Correct.
long iron. And that's the gist of it. Which in itself is not necessarily untrue, because I'm going to go to the data in a second and actually run you through this just to talk about it. And this is, global data for, for strokes gained from a variety of sources. You've got Arcos data, you've got shot scope data. There's millions and millions of rounds to draw from here. And it is interesting because we'll look at the PGA Tour stats to start with. Okay, so
Because that's how we view ourselves.
I said to start with. I'm then going to go to amateur stats, which is for handicaps between 5 and 10. So doesn't include you, Andy Walker. But PGA Tour, just because it's always fun. So the most up to date that I could get my hands on this one was actually 2023. Probably hasn't changed a lot in 2024. But the average distance for driver was around about 300 yards.
Yep.
And for 3-wood was around about 275 yards. So there's a 25-yard difference.
Yep.
The fairways hit percentage with driver was 58%
Yep.
and change. And for 3-wood was 64%.
Yep.
Okay. So that's better. So it's a 6% improvement in fairways hit, but giving up on average 25 yards.
Yep. Yep.
So what does that mean for strokes gained?
Mm.
So the strokes gained data on this was 0.25 strokes gained for a fairway, well, on average for a driver. And for a 3-wood, it was 0.12. So it was a difference of 0.13 strokes gained between driver and fairway, 3-wood off the tee. So that's interesting. So that means if you're going to hit, what are you going to hit? Say potentially 14 tee shots that are not par threes.
Yep.
Your average golf course. You are giving up, what does that work out at? Almost, it's a bit over 1.5 shots on the field by taking 3-wood over driver.
Yep. And effectively what that's from a realistic perspective, when you're standing on the tee and you're hitting driver, even if you hit it into the rough, it's going to be further down the fairway, 25 yards down the fairway. It's going to be an easier shot from the rough with a shorter iron than what it is from the fairway with an additional 2 clubs. So the difference between, say, hitting a 8 iron from the light rough, which technically is not a fairway hit, to being on the fairway hitting a 6 iron, what they're actually saying is you're going to get closer to the pin. Your on average, your proximity to the pin is going to be less with an 8 iron from the light rough than what it is with a 6 iron from the fairway.
Yeah, that is true. What's also true in these stats is that when, let's say, both shots just miss the fairway. So comparing, because there's only a 6% differential. So at 64% for a 3-wood, you're still missing the fairway 36% of the time. So it's more than a third. So let's have a look at if you are playing out of the rough from that 3-wood distance, hitting a 5 or 6 iron out of the rough versus
Yep.
hitting an 8 or 9 iron out of the rough,
Yep.
that is a substantial difference. Now, I'd
Yeah, for sure.
actually like to look at the stats on likelihood to hit a green from that, but I would suggest that it'd be like double.
Yep.
So that's really, and that's at PGA Tour level. But let's look at your average amateurs, and this is actually a very similar story. So we're talking about the data for amateurs with handicaps between 5 and 10. So remember, these are averages. When I read out the distances, you're all going to scream, I hit it further than that. And you probably do. I know I do. But anyway, these are averages. So they include a wide variety of golf. So it's looking at driver average distance of 260 yards. It's actually probably not far off the mark for a lot of people.
Yep.
At 260 yards, fairways hit is averaging 50%.
Yep.
Then 3-wood is looking at averages of 235 yards.
Yep.
With fairways hit at 58%. So the difference is similar. It's an 8% difference. And then looking at driving irons, so 2 to 3 iron-ish, averaging 210 yards. So giving up 50 yards now against driver. And that's only increasing the fairways percentage to 65%. So you're still missing it a third of the time.
So,
now, strokes.
So if we're looking at that just on a, and we talked about fairways in regulation. So, we're, and again, taking the average golf course of 14 fairways, 14 tee shots. So 50% is 7 fairways.
Yeah.
58% is 8 fairways, or 8.12.
Yeah.
And what was 65%?
65.
So that's 9.1 fairway. So effectively what you're saying is that if you're hitting driver, you're going to hit 7 out of 14. If you hit 3-wood, you're going to hit 8 out of 14 rounded.
Yeah.
And with a long iron, 2 or a 3 iron, you're going to hit 9 fairways.
But giving up 50 yards each time.
But giving up 50 yards, yeah.
Which is the important number, because when you break that down into strokes gained, the driver is delivering you positive 0.15 strokes gained per tee shot.
Yep.
The 3-wood is delivering a minus 0.05 strokes gained per tee shot. So you're losing a little bit. The driving iron is giving you minus 0.3. So really, if you're playing driver off the tee, you're picking up between 1.5 to 2 shots on the field.
Yep.
If you're playing a driving iron off the tee, you are giving up 3 to 4 shots on the field.
Yep.
It's what the stats are telling us.
Yep.
I would put it to you, Andy Walker, that is myth busted.
Yep. Yep. I agree with you completely.
There we go. We're 1 from 1. You beauty.
Hey, giddy up. Should we end there? 100%.
Hang on a minute. Let me check the time. No, we're not going to end there. Come on. The Pilgrims are loving this. Absolutely loving this. I can hear them in the background.
So should we move to number 2?
Yeah, we should. What do you got for number 2?
All right. So number 2, only good players should get a club fitting.
Well, I've heard this.
Yep.
Have you heard this one?
I've heard this one. I actually sort of half believed it. In fact, I actually at one point thought that, a fitting really doesn't add that much value. At one point, I thought that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I resisted for as long as I did.
Yep. You also hear this, I think, kind of rebadged a little bit as blame the archer, not the arrow.
Yep.
There's all sorts of things. Look, it's not about the clubs, it's about the player.
Yep.
We've heard that. We've all heard that. And look, there's truth in it. But, I think the better the player becomes, potentially the more ability they might have to adapt to different clubs.
Correct.
However, the probably the downside of that is the better the player becomes, probably the more they've practiced and the more grooved in the swing is. So therefore, maybe the harder it is. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly when you get to, professional level, I think you can adapt a lot. Well, I think it probably is probably an individual perspective that each golfer has, is that there are some golfers that can adapt, and there are some golfers that just need to play the same way every
Mm.
single shot. So I probably need to retract that and just say it's probably on a case by case basis as to whether a golfer is able to adapt to a set of clubs that's not necessarily the right fit for them, and still bring a reasonable level of game. Of course, there's certainly a lot of good players out there that if they're using the wrong equipment, it's not going to end well.
Well, that's true, and I think on this is that one of the other things that you kind of hear said is there's no point getting a fitting because my swing is too inconsistent.
Mm.
I've heard that one said.
Yeah.
The interesting thing on that, it's probably not. What you're probably saying is my outcomes are too inconsistent.
Yeah.
But your swing is probably very consistent. It's
Yeah.
just that it's producing inconsistent outcomes. That's a whole rabbit hole to go down. But
Yeah.
essentially, there are certain things within a golf swing that a club fitter can absolutely help. And one of the things with it, if you buy clubs off the shelf, question for the pilgrims to maybe think about listening at home or in the car is, do you know what your swing speed is, say with a driver or with a 7-iron? And therefore, as a result, do you know what shaft stiffness you should be playing? If you haven't done a fitting, you probably don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so do you buy regular flex shafts? Do you buy stiff flex shafts? Do you buy senior shafts? Do you buy extra stiff shafts? Do you buy carbon fiber shafts, steel shafts, etc.? There's so many options, but you really don't know. The other thing with it as well is, do you know, simple things like what lie you need to have on your clubs, on your irons? Do they need to be a bit more upright? Do they need to be a bit flatter? Some of those sorts of questions. Also,
I think the other one is how consistent you are with hitting the middle of the club,
absolutely.
because of course that then comes down to, should you go with a game improvement iron,
Mm-hmm.
or should you more go for a tour iron? And
Mm-hmm.
you don't, there's a lot of relatively high handicap golfers that actually hit the middle of the club a lot. It's just that they potentially have the wrong shaft,
Yes.
which is adding inconsistency and a greater shot dispersion to their golf swing.
Absolutely. So I think the thing on this, like some of the benefits. So when you're looking at beginners and high handicappers, there's so many who have got the wrong shaft, and as you say, potentially playing the wrong head type. So you might, if you don't have that faster swing speed, you might need the distance irons that really help get your launch and stronger lofted and some of those sorts of characteristics to get the ball in the air. Whereas if you're a better player, you might really be wanting to focus less on distance, but more on the gapping between your clubs.
Correct.
And absolutely on your dispersion, getting that as tight as you possibly can. So less about distance, more about, kind of getting your distances and your directions right. And the other thing as well is that you're looking at things. This is one of the things I learned when I did my fitting, is you're looking at things like obviously ball flight, but there's launch angle and angle of descent was really interesting, which I didn't know
Yep.
about before I did this. And
Mm.
that's the difference between being able to hold a green with your longer irons versus it just coming in really hot and going straight through.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things with it. It can definitely help. If you've got a problem with a slice or a hook or something like that, a good fitting can help straighten you out.
Yep.
Without changing your swing, because you might be hitting a club that's actually working against you.
Mm. Mm.
many benefits to club fittings.
Yeah. The other thing that I've found really interesting, that I had a bit of a look at almost 12 months ago when I had my club fitting. I then went back onto the Titleist website and had a look at some of the tour players and what's in their bag. And if you
Mm.
have a look in the tour, of course, I had a chat with Jason Butt, after we did the driver and four fairway and the utility, as to what the next phase would be, and using, where my irons should be, and at the moment I'm still using the AP2s. But he started talking about maybe having a hybrid set of irons. So starting off,
Yep.
say, with your 4 iron, maybe 5 iron, going with the T200, and then with the shorter end of the bag going to the T150s, and then the Vokeys for my wedges. And I'm like, that's a bit strange. I hadn't really heard of that before. But then
I have heard of that. Yeah.
you go onto the Titleist website and they've got their tour players, and you look at what's in their bag, and it's actually really common
Mm. It
that
is.
the longer irons they're playing, whether it be the utility, the T200s, and then they'll go, well, some of them go to the T100s, some of them are using blades, but there's a couple that are using the T150s. So it's something that I've given a bit of thought to,
Mm.
and will be certainly something that I'll, and I have sort of committed, at the appropriate time, to go back to Jason and do an iron and wedge fitting. And yeah, that'll certainly be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually remember hearing this is going back probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. Um, you remember I had a set of M4
Yes.
irons.
Yep.
They qualify as game improvement irons, the TaylorMade M4s. A bit old now, but back 5 6 years ago when they came out. And at the time, TaylorMade were talking about the fact that Dustin Johnson was playing an M4 4 iron
Yep.
as his driving iron.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is very surprising, but
Yeah. 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 For sure.
um, but that's what he was doing because of the fact that it really gives you the improvement on or the help in launching a long iron, which
Yeah.
can really be difficult, and particularly for a lot of amateur players with slower swing speeds and DJ.
Yep. Yep.
Very difficult to get long irons off the ground.
Mm.
So, look, there's a few common excuses you hear about fittings, and you hear first one, "I'm not good enough for a fitting." We talked about that, and the reality is that that fittings will help inconsistent ball strikers probably more than
Yeah. For
consistent
sure.
ball strikers.
For sure. And that's purely the fact that you're getting a set of golf clubs that is specifically designed for you.
That's right. Another one you hear is, which we talked a bit about, is I'll wait till my swing is better. And that's an interesting one because you're probably going to improve faster with equipment that suits you rather than fighting
Yep.
against your equipment.
The only thing that the caveat I'll say on that one is that if you're in the middle of making some pretty major swing changes, it's probably something to have a chat to your
True.
coach about.
True. And you might find that if it's a significant change, then potentially your equipment needs to shift with it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is true. And the next one, which is interesting, is that I don't want to get a fitting because fittings are expensive.
No, they're actually not. Like they're, well, my fitting was free, but then I
Yeah,
also bought a couple of clubs,
yeah,
after it as well. So, but there was no commitment to
correct.
purchase. If I didn't want to purchase, it could have been a free fitting, and off I went. So it's just that it was so good and I found it so useful that it was really not a choice. Just, yeah, it wasn't even a choice for me. It was the logical option.
That's right. I would argue that the fitting is not the expensive part. The clubs you buy afterwards is the expensive part,
Yeah.
but no
Yeah.
more expensive than buying an off the shelf club
No. Yeah.
generally. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's the same
Yeah.
club. It's just that the specs are suited to your game.
Yeah. And you don't, it's not wherever you get your fitting, that's not, it's not that they don't have the clubs there. Like they then put the order into the manufacturer. So all the
Yeah,
manufacturer's doing is just putting together another set of golf clubs.
That's right. It's no different. Now, I do think, and I think we have to be honest about this, I do think there are a few traps that you can walk into with club fittings. And a couple of them for mine are when you go for brand specific fittings, that can sometimes not be the best option. Sometimes it can be great if you know what you want. And an
Yep.
example of that is the fittings that we've both done with Jason Butt with Titleist specific gear. You
Yep.
know, if you know I want to play Titleist, and you know, in your case, you're a bit of a Titleist fanboy.
Yep.
In my
I
case,
not a bit. I mean, I've played Titleist ever since. Well, I don't want to tell you what year it was, but it was a very,
it
very
was a
long
long
time
time ago.
ago.
Yeah,
And certainly from an iron perspective, I've always played Titleist irons from a very, very young age.
yeah. So I think that's one thing. I mean, I went and did the wedge fitting with Jason because I knew that I wanted to play Vokey wedges because, to be perfectly honest, there's just no other wedge in the game that's as good.
Yep.
And it was a case of finding out the grind, the loft, the gapping, the bounce, and all those sorts of things. It was an awesome experience. But
Yep.
other fitting experiences that I've done that have been brand agnostic have been really interesting, and that was the recent one that I did with my putter, and it
Yep.
ending up with a tailor-made spider. I didn't see that coming, but it's been amazing. I love it. But probably the biggest one, and for me, the biggest game changer was when I did my driver fitting. And I thought going in there that there was a large percentage chance that I'd probably end up with something like a Callaway Paradigm, which kind of seemed to be dominating the marketing at the time.
Yep.
Really struggled with it. And I ended up with a Ping G430, and it's phenomenal. I
Yep.
like it, it's honestly, it's probably my most reliable club at the moment.
Mm.
And I could not have imagined getting a better outcome out of a club
Yep.
fitting than what I've got out of that. And that was, that was getting the right head, but more importantly, the right shaft combination in that one. And interestingly, I struggled with the Callaway. I actually struggled with the Titleist at the time, which was the TSR series. It was before the
Yep.
GTs came out.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Well, that's what I sort of got mine at the end of the TSRs. So
yeah,
yeah, and I'm sort of similar, even though I did do a Titleist specific fitting. We did sort of go through, a couple of the Titleist specs and specifically shafts. But what I came away with was different to what I thought, because the other one is the length of the driver, in that
yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
my
yeah.
driver is half an inch shorter than standard, and we tested that at the range and tested that on the TrackMan, and it just came up so much more consistent being half an inch shorter, and I would never have thought about that if I just walked into a golf shop and wanted to buy a new driver. And certainly in that first few months of getting the Titleists, like my off the tee, my game improved significantly. As we talked about, I'm struggling a bit at the moment because of the swing changes I'm making, but certainly it made a huge difference from the old TaylorMade M3s that I had.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it is interesting. I'd love to see you just do a fitting day with Ping drivers and see what you think.
Hmm.
That's a story for another day. Not to try and talk you out of Titleist. I know that'd be very, very difficult to do.
Would be very difficult.
Yeah, but that's okay. Look, I think the upshot of that, Andy Walker, is that the myth, which is that only good players benefit from a club fitting, I think we've given plenty of evidence to suggest that all players can benefit from a club fitting.
Yeah,
And in fact,
100%.
potentially, those players that are, sort of with high teens into 20s and above handicaps, there might be some lower hanging fruit in particular that could be really improved really quickly,
Yeah,
that could see some significant handicap drops.
yeah, yeah, completely agree.
So I put it to you, myth number 2, busted.
Go on.
2 for 2. How well are
Mm.
we doing?
We're
It's
doing all right.
amazing.
Are you sure you don't want to end here?
Let me just check. Pilgrims, what do you reckon? Nah, let's keep
All right,
going.
let's
Keep
keep
pushing
going.
it.
All right.
We got at least one more in this. This one's a good one. This I have been guilty of thinking this too. Okay. So I want to put this to you, Andy Walker, and see
Yep.
what you think. That using a less lofted driver is the best way to get more distance.
If that was the case, you would
One
have thought
degree.
that a 0.5 degree driver. Interestingly, though, because again, I'm guilty of this as well. As a
Yeah.
young bloke, one of the mistakes that I did make was I bought when the TaylorMades and the small metalwood
Oh, yeah,
heads
yeah, yeah,
came
yeah,
out,
yeah.
I got a TaylorMade 7 degree
Oh,
driver.
that's
And
just like hitting a steak knife.
yeah, I must admit I struggled
I
with it,
can imagine.
surprisingly.
I can
When it
imagine.
went, it went. Like it was great when I hit it out of the middle of the club and it went in a straightish direction. But God, it was hard to hit. It was
Oh,
so hard to hit.
it would be like hitting a long shafted putter.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, that's definitely. And look, again, come back to club fitting is that you during that club fitting process, you can actually get data. You can actually get the stats on what the best lofted driver is for you. And I went through a couple of the different lofted drivers, and we came back with the 9 degree driver, and that's perfect for me.
hmm. Look, I think you're right. Like the club fitting will give you the answers, but if you imagine this, it's pretty easy to imagine, right? Like if you've got, um, say, you've got a cannon, a big artillery gun, something like that, and if you're trying to fire it a particular distance,
Mm.
you're going to alter the launch angle of the shell that you fire out of your cannon. Now, there will come a point where one that is too low, so the loft is too low, it's going to go straight and gravity will take effect and it's going to hit the ground relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's going to get the troops in front of you
Yeah,
if
right, right in the back of the
if you're
head.
inside. Yeah,
So then you increase that launch angle to an optimum amount, and that's going to launch it and get the longest amount of distance that it can before the shell hits the ground.
yeah,
If you keep launching it higher and higher, you're going to get a taller parabola that's just going to go higher and then land shorter. So at some point, there's a sweet spot.
and then you're just going to shoot it up directly vertical and get
Straight up. Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You're big on friendly fire, Andy Walker.
I am.
Um,
I am.
and I think this is what we're talking about with drivers. And now what the stats say is that for most amateur players, say that have got swing speeds with driver of around about somewhere between 95 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour, which is pretty average.
Yep.
Um, you really need something that's about 10 and a half to 12 degrees. So 10 and a
Yep.
half at a minimum, up to 12 degrees. Because what I'm told is by the information that's out there on the interweb is the optimum launch angle for a driver is at about 18 or 19 degrees.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the loft of your driver plus, swinging up at it a little bit. And,
Yep.
so the dynamic loft that you're creating. And then that also is in relation to the spin rate, the optimum spin rate that you want to have. So you kind of want to reduce spin, launch the ball high, because adding spin will cause the ball to balloon.
Yep.
So taking it off so it will travel. But to take spin off, you've got to launch it high enough to begin with. So if you're hitting a lower lofted driver, you're not going to be able to achieve that optimum launch angle at
Mm.
those types of swing speeds. And the interesting thing is a lower lofted driver will also reduce spin. So you're going to throw knuckleballs,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep. Yep. And that's effectively what the 7 degree Taylor did. It's in dry conditions, it ran a mile.
Yeah.
Mind you, I barely was able to get above the tree line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think this one's pretty clear cut. Like, there's a sweet spot. You've got to get the
Yeah,
right loft for you. The only way to do it is through a club fitting.
yeah,
But for the average everyday golfer, just simply going, I'm going to play an 8-degree driver, you're not
yeah.
going to hit the ball farther.
No, no, no. And I certainly think the analogy with the cannon, that's a really good visual representation of what happens with the golf ball and that launch angle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, another way of thinking about it is when you're playing tennis. If you think about your hitting from the baseline, if you just try and hit one starting at it just above the net, you've got to hit that really hard for that to get
Mm.
over the net. Otherwise, it's
Yeah,
going to drop because, you know, gravity's a thing.
yeah, yeah. There's also topspin with tennis.
There can be, but there can also be backspin. Depends on what you
Mm.
do with
That is
the
true.
racket. Anyway, this is a golf show, not a tennis show. Stick to the point.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true.
And we're explaining why. So
I like
anyhow,
I like the cannon analogy better than the tennis analogy.
what else have we got? Uh, let's leave it there. I think people
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. Like
So,
if Evil Knievel went up the ramp on a motorbike,
oh, so good.
so I think it was the Grand Canyon, wasn't it, that he tried to jump over at one point? Um,
I don't think he ever tried to jump the Grand Canyon. I
no,
think he was talking about it, but
yeah,
like that,
I
that
don't-
I could be wrong. Let's research this.
yeah. Let's do that. Yeah.
Let's get this on the Facebook page. Bit of Evil Knievel
Hey, hang on,
information.
keep talking. I'm going to Google on my phone.
Google it. Evil
Yeah.
Knievel. I mean, what a legend he was. His motorbike riding outfit, the white suit with the stars and stripes down the side. I don't know if you remember Andy Walker, but he had a cape, and he also was riding his motorbike in flared pants. The stars and stripes suit had the flared bell bottom pants. That was
It
quite something to behold. I
was a
loved
great
Evil
look.
Knievel when I was a
Okay,
kid.
I've got the answer. So this is just Google search with Safari, and they've now got AI. I'm pretty impressed
Oh, okay.
with the AI answers. So no, Evil Knievel never successfully jumped the Grand Canyon.
Oh, does that mean
He
he unsuccessfully jumped?
he famously attempted and failed to jump the Snake River Canyon in Idaho, not the Grand Canyon.
So, what happened? Did you have a parachute?
That's about all AI
Or did
gives
he
me. So we'll have
plummet
to
to his demise?
no
That's not
19
how Evil Knievel died, surely.
no, I don't think so. Maybe he did. I don't know.
Well, I hope not. We shouldn't laugh.
This is quality entertainment here, folks.
If anyone out there knows a bit more about Evil Knievel than we do, please let us know.
I don't think, I reckon there's quite a few people who probably did.
I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to say that Big Kerrod from Dubbo is going to know more about Evil Knievel than you and I, because I know that Kay is a motorbike enthusiast.
He tried to jump the fountains at the Caesar's Palace, which resulted in severe injuries.
I remember that. I reckon I watched that one live. What year was that? Does it say?
So here we go. So I'm on Wikipedia now.
Was that like
So on
1981?
yeah, on September 8, 1974, Knievel attempted to jump across the Snake River Canyon in Idaho using
Okay.
a rocket-powered cycle called the Sky Cycle X2. The
Yes, he
jump
did.
failed after the parachute deployed prematurely, but
Oh,
Knievel survived with minor injuries. There you go.
excellent. When was the Caesar's Palace incident?
Oh,
Do you know?
just shut it down. When was that?
I want to find out when that was.
Uh, no, it
I'm,
doesn't give me a date.
I'm guessing 1981. I'm pretty sure I saw it. Maybe I didn't. I could be making it up, or maybe I watched a replay. Who's to know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, we're not talking about Evil Knievel. So.
I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about Evil Knievel.
Good one.
Wow,
Uh,
didn't see that
we,
coming.
we didn't have that in the agenda, talking about Evil Knievel, did we?
Next time, honestly, the next time I have a conversation with someone on a tee box about the amount of degrees of loft on their driver,
Yeah.
it's going to descend into a conversation about Evil
Yeah.
Knievel.
He just obviously with his unsuccessful jumps, he had the wrong launch angle.
Oh, you know what else that's reminded me of when you're talking about launch angle and distance? It's Eddie the Eagle, the ski jumper from the UK
Oh,
in the
yes.
Winter
Yep.
Olympics. He
Yep.
had the
Yep.
launch angles, or he had the descent angle wrong. It's what he had.
Wow.
Oh man, this is my favorite episode that we've ever done, Andy Walker. So good.
All
Anyway,
right.
are you
Myth
happy?
busting.
Are you happy to
I,
call that
I, I
myth
I think I
busted?
think we're done. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's busted. Oh, that is hilarious. All right, we're at 55 minutes, Andy Walker.
All right. I reckon we've got time for one or two more. So
We got time for another one.
let's get into number four, which is actually dedicated to our old mate David McClellan.
David McClelland.
Yes, and that is the best way to improve is to work on
Short game,
short
short
game,
game,
short
short
game.
game.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And look, we're not. Let's sort of preface this a little bit. We're not saying that short game's not important, right? Because it is, and I'm certainly a big subscriber to the Bob Rotella theory that the better the golfer you are,
the more important it is.
the more important it is. All right. Certainly,
I
when
totally
you're
agree.
getting to the top of that pyramid, and you're getting into the you know shaving you know less than one stroke, or trying to shave less than one stroke around,
Yep.
when you're looking at 72 holes and going, I want to pick up half a shot per round. That's where your
Make a
short
few
game really,
putts.
yeah, short
100%.
game really comes into the fore.
100%. You know why people focus on it so much, though, Andy Walker? It's because it becomes binary. The closer you get to the hole, the smaller your miss window becomes.
Yep.
All right. Off the tee, you've got about 50, 60 meters to aim at left to right on the fairway. You're going for the green, that narrows down to about, say 20 meters. Short game around the green, that probably narrows down to about 5 meters. And then when you're putting, it narrows down to, really 4 inches. So
Yep.
it just narrows and narrows the closer you get. But I'm going to throw some stats at you, Andy Walker, because I agree with everything that you've said. The better you get, the more you've squeezed all the other lemons on the tree, the more the short game lemon needs to get squeezed. There's
Yep.
another great analogy for you. But I'll go back to my old friend strokes gained. And this is interesting. This is looking at the percentage of your strokes gained performance that is delivered by the various aspects of the game.
Yep.
Okay. Wrap your head around that. So what it says, and again, this is based on all the data that's out there with your Arcos systems and shot scope systems and all that sort of stuff. And Mark Brody's done a lot of work with his Every Shot Counts
Yep.
book around this.
And if you really want to dive into the numbers, go and get that book.
100%.
That it's a great book to read. And I certainly learnt an extraordinary amount from reading that book.
Can't agree more. Now, from that, what it says is driving performance. So tee shots hit. According to this data, driving performance contributes approximately 29.3% for your overall strokes gained performance.
Yep.
That's driving. That's tee shots. That's huge. What's huger, which is not a word.
Huger.
Yeah, which is not actually a word. What is a bigger impact is your approach play. And this is why I think greens in reg remain such an important stat. But
Yep.
your approach shots account for 39.2%
Wow.
of your total strokes gained result.
Yep. Yep. That's massive, isn't it?
That's huge. Your pitching and chipping around the green, aka short game, contributes 12.4% to the strokes gained result, which is the smallest of the lot. And putting, even though you'll probably spend, 30 odd of your 70 to 80 shots putting, but putting only, and I've found this surprising, but only contributes about 19% of strokes gained results.
Yep.
Now, what that means when you add them up is that driving and approach play combined, so the big sticks in the bag, they deliver nearly 69% of your strokes gained outcome.
Yep.
So that's got to be where the lion's share of the improvement can
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah. And certainly, and we've talked about it before, you're never going to hit it out of bounds when you're on the green.
Oh, I'd say it's unlikely.
So it's probably even unlikely you're going to hit, although depends on how close the out of bounds is to the green. You're not going to, the vast majority of the time, you're not going to hit it out of bounds from, say, inside 50 or 60 yards, right?
I want to confess something, Andy Walker. I have put one out of bounds from a greenside bunker.
We're busting myths, okay? No, that's the opposite of it. Like, they're the
North
outliers.
North Ride Golf Course, circa 2015.
Yeah.
I think it's the second hole back up the hill, car park behind the green, which was great. And greenside bunker, let's just say caught it a bit clean.
Yeah.
Picked it up as I got in my car after the round.
Nice. Nice.
So
Yeah.
anyhow, we move on.
But we're talking not outliers here. So we're talking
Yeah, no,
generally
you're
speaking,
100% right. 100% right.
and whether it be off the tee or your approaches into the green, there's a lot that can go wrong, and whether it be hazards, whether it be out of bounds, whether it be just hitting it in the bush, like there's so many strokes that you can lose from tee to green that you're just never going to lose those shots around the green.
Correct. I also think that the expectations that we hold of our putting performances are like just grossly incorrect.
Yeah. Look, and that's an interesting point, because in you talk at the start, you talked about the binary aspect of and certainly putting. And when you've got a 3-foot putt and you miss it, you feel like you've lost a shot, right? But if you hit your drive, and say you hit your drive into the trees, you've still got the opportunity to make that shot back, to minimize that error.
That's right.
And that is very true. However, you've got to look at it over the whole game and your whole performance, not just individual aspects of the game.
So here's a thing on that topic, right? Is that for amateur golfers, handicap golfers, your 50% make or miss putt range, it's about 6 feet.
Yeah.
On the PGA Tour, it's 8 feet.
Yeah.
For your average weekend battler, it's about 6 feet. Now, for certain individuals, obviously that will shift in and out, but on average, it's about 6 feet. If you miss a 6-footer on Saturday in the comp, as you say, you feel like you've lost a shot, right? Should have made it, didn't make it.
Yep.
If I improved my putting, I would increase, like I'd make a whole shot.
Yep.
In fact, you've lost half a shot on the strokes gained because it's a 50-50 situation. So you've lost 0.5 a shot. If you sink it, you've gained 0.5 of a shot. Now, here's the interesting thing. You also talked about the comparison to off the tee. If you put one into the trees, the strokes gained data will tell you there, if you put one into the trees, you've probably lost about 1.25 shots with that drive. It's far worse than the missed 6-footer. But what's the one at the end of the round when you're in a clubhouse that you're going to remember? It's the missed 6-footer every single time.
Yeah. And look, if you say have, say 4 6-footers in a round of golf, which isn't uncommon, and say you get half, you get 2 and you miss 2, you're going to be back in, but you're going to be back in the clubhouse going, oh, if I'd just got those 2 6-footers, I would have had a 2-shot better score, and let's get out on the putting green so I get my stroke right. But really, from a strokes gain data, you've just performed as expected.
Correct.
Whereas the couple of tee shots that you hit into the trees, well, that's giving you a far worse strokes gain data than what the 2 6-footers has.
Correct. Another way of looking at it, which I would say is, if you say you shot 85 And if you're shooting 85, let's say a pretty reasonable assumption might be that you've had about 35 putts.
Yep.
It's probably not going to be far off. Now, the way that golf courses are designed, par 72, let's say, in regulation, 72 general play shots, 36 general play shots, and 36 putts adds up to your 72. So if you shot 85 with 35 putts, which is pretty average,
Yep.
your putting's not your problem, right? Your tee to green play is your problem. You've had 50 general play shots when you should have had 36. You've had 35 putts when you should have had 36. That's okay. If your putting was as bad as your general play was, you'd have shot 100.
Yep.
So that tells me that for most players, it's a lot of it. And as we said at the get-go, there's degrees on this. The better you get, the more important the short game becomes because your long game's probably okay.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, the long game is where you are legitimately leaking shots.
Yeah. Yeah. But
avoidable.
again, you look on the PGA Tour and you look at the guys at the top of the leaderboard, the top of the FedEx, the top of the world rankings, they're all ball strikers. Like they all, you look at their strokes gained data with their ball striking, and they're all also at the top of the
Absolutely.
strokes gained data.
Absolutely. And they're there all year round. The
Yep.
days they win, they match that to a good putting round.
Correct.
But their
Correct.
ball striking is always the bedrock that it's built on.
Yep.
I think this one's clear cut, Andy
Oh,
Walker.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. There is no question about this one.
And I'm looking you, David McClelland, straight in the eye when I say myth busted.
Busted. Definitely.
All right. Wow. 4 myths down. And
All right.
we're going to do one. Hour.
We're going to do one more.
We can do one more. We're going to do one more. And I think it's a pretty easy one. And
okay,
this
hit me with it.
This one is something that I don't know. I hear all the time. You see it on chat groups on the internet all the time. You see it on Facebook all the time. And it is a variation of the statement that says your handicap is your average score and you should be able to play to it every time. You know, like you hear people going, oh, you're a scratch golfer. You should be shooting 72 every week.
Yep. Yep. And to be honest with you, this was something that I thought as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Early days.
Okay.
Until I got an understanding of how it all worked and sort of figured out that, hey, you know, just because I'm sort of a 4 or a 3 or a 2 handicap, I'm not going to shoot that all the time. But
no, you're not.
You know, if I play well enough, often enough, well, you know, I'll eventually shoot to that handicap or better when I'm playing well.
Mm. Do you know how the handicapping system works, Andy Walker?
I do know how the handicapping system works. So it's 20 rounds. It's your best 8 rounds.
What do you do with the best 8 rounds?
Well, you add them up and divide them by 8.
So you take an average?
Well, you at the way, certainly in Australia, the way that it works at the moment, and that's with the world handicapping system, is your exact handicap is your best 8 rounds, the aggregate of your best 8 rounds divided by 8. But then your daily handicap, then you're taking the slope rating and the course into consideration when you're getting your exact handicap for the day.
So you're right. So to spell it out for the pilgrims, and many of you will know this, I hope you know this, but there is a bit of complexity when we talk about daily handicap, and I'll go to that. So yes, your handicap is your golf index, we should say, rather than your specific handicap. So your index, which is what we call handicap, but it's not what you play off each day. That is the average of your best 8 scores out of your last 20. Interestingly, what that means, Andy Walker, equates to the top 20% of your last 20 rounds. It's true.
Okay.
It's true. Do the maths. You'll find that I'm right. It's top 20% of your last 20 rounds is what your index ends up being. Yep. because imagine 10 out of 20 would be 50%.
Mm.
8 out of 20 is 40%, but the
Yeah,
average of 8 takes you halfway. So that's 20%. You with me?
sure.
Get your calculator out after the show. Um, so that's interesting. So if it's a top 20%, you actually should be playing to it 1 in 5.
Yeah.
Not all
Yeah.
the
Well,
time.
well, I mean, they say that your average, and if you're talking about Stableford score, I think it's either 32 or 33 points. I can't remember
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
what
you're right.
what
You're
it
right.
is. You've
It is
I don't know
32
if
and
you've
a
got
half.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So
So,
straight in between that.
yeah. So, no, and you're 100% right. Now, where it gets to the daily handicap, and I'll just give you the maths on this just for the sake of completeness, is the way that it works is you take your index, you divide it by 113, you multiply it by the slope rating of the golf course that you're playing on that
Yeah,
particular day, which might be 124, it might be 139, whatever it might be. And then you divide it by 0.93.
correct. Correct. Which interestingly, that step, the 0.93,
Used to be the
was
first step.
used to be
Yep.
part of the handicap index,
Yes.
but
And then
they
they
changed
removed that.
that. Yeah, yeah, with moving
Yep.
to the world handicapping system.
And that was the point where everyone screamed with the new world handicapping system and went, "Oh, I've got an extra shot back. And that's ridiculous." No, you didn't. They
Yeah,
just moved where the 0.93
correct.
multiplier sat.
Correct.
So that's a piece of trivia for you, Pilgrims. You probably didn't know. So that's how it works. And that's why it can shift course to course, depending on the difficulty of the course. So, but the important thing is that it represents your 20th percentile, not your average. Something else I would put to this, and this is to the second half of it. So we've dealt with your handicap is your average score. It's not busted. You should be able to play to it every time. I want to talk
Busted.
about volatility of scores, Andy
Yeah.
Walker, and your average range in a year or a season between your best and your worst.
Yeah.
What do you reckon that range, generally speaking, would be?
Oh, I was going to say that's a very individual question.
It's
But
not. It's actually not.
on average, I don't know. I'd be guessing.
The funny thing is, the data suggests, and it doesn't really change from PGA Tour pros to 30 handicappers. This is interesting. The data suggests it's around about 20 shots from best to worst.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And you think about it, you go 20 shots, not a chance. Does Rory McIlroy have a 20 shot variance? He does. Has been
Well,
known to shoot a 60 or 61 and
yeah,
has been known to shoot a 79 and 80.
yeah, yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
And for you as a, you know, two handicapper, have been known to shoot a 69, 70 and have been known to shoot a 90.
I, 89. I broke 90.
Yeah. And so you think about this with your own game, listening at whatever level you're playing at, around about, give or take, but around about 20 shots is the normal variation between best and worst.
Yeah, right.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I would have thought it would be higher. The the variable would be greater the higher your handicap.
Like for some individuals, sure. Generally speaking, it's not because your best doesn't get that much lower.
Yeah, I reckon
it's the deviation from the mean, basically.
yeah, and that's what I would have thought. I would have thought that say the PGA Tour, while the average might be 20 shots, the outliers are probably going to be closer to the mean than what the outliers of the higher handicappers are.
Not necessarily.
Is that a fair
No,
statement or
no,
no?
it's not. Because what we're actually measuring when we're talking about this range is outlier to outlier, best to worst. Okay. What you'll find though, like when you look at Rory McIlroy as an example, or you look at Scotty Scheffler as an example, one of the top dogs, is they might have a range that they've shot a 60 and they've shot an 80 throughout the season. So they've got their 20. But 99% of their rounds are probably going to be within a 4 or 5 shot bracket. It's just there'll be the odd one that's way outside. but the vast majority are going to be in that sort of, 65 to 70 range.
I guess that my point, my previous point was more so that there's going to be, logically, I would have thought that there's going to be a greater percentage of golfers of high handicap outside of the mean, like shooting greater scores than what there is of. So while the average might still be 20 shots, there would be a greater number of people, high handicappers, that would shoot outside of that range, even though the average is still the same. I don't know if I explained that very well, but
Yeah, I
but
think I know what you mean, and
at least I know
probably
what I mean.
probably you're probably right, but the point that I'm making is almost everyone's got about a 20 shot
Yeah,
range in them. So
yeah,
when you're going, my average, I'm playing off 8. I should be shooting around 80. Okay, now that means that a really good day for me, I'm not going to shoot 10 shots better than that, right? Like I'm going to shoot maybe 4 shots better than that. So I might shoot a
yeah.
mid 70s. But that range of 20, that means I've got a mid 90s in me as well.
Mm. Yep.
And that's true. That can happen. You look at a 30 handicapper and he goes, all right, well, I'm supposed to be shooting 102. Okay, he might have a day where he shoots 5 or 6 better than that. So he's going to shoot mid 90s, but he's also going to shoot mid 100 and teens.
Yep.
And again, that's absolutely true.
Mm. Yep.
He might be more likely to have, if he's playing stroke events, to have a few days that blow out beyond that, more so than, say, the Tour Pro is going to shoot more than 80. Sure.
Yep.
But where it really dives into the difference is the better you get, the less of your rounds within that 20 are, say, in the outside 5.
Yep.
They're more closer to the mean. Whereas
Yeah.
you'll have more dispersion within that 20, the
Yep.
worse a player you are.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that
And
was
that
sort of
might be what you're
what I
driving
was.
at.
Yeah, that's more
But
what I was driving at, rather
yeah,
than the 20 shots as such.
yeah,
It's more so that, say you've got 100 tour pros and 130 handicappers. There might, out of that 100 tour pros, there might be, say, 5 or 6 that shoot more than the 20, but there's going to be probably 30 handicappers that shoot like significantly outside of that.
yeah. It's kind of saying the same thing in a slightly
Yeah,
different way, but
yeah, exactly. So
essentially,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
essentially, the point on this is that there's absolutely no expectation that you're going to shoot your handicap every day you go out.
yeah, 100%.
When you consider that it's already your best 20%, and you've got this wild variation from the mean, there's not a chance you're going to be shooting it week in, week out, which
Yeah,
is why golf is still a sport that has to be played for the tournament. And we don't just hand it to the player with the best average score because he's going to shoot that every week. Like
yeah,
there's variability. So
yeah, yeah. So I also think that comes back to expectation management as well. If you understand
yeah,
how the handicapping system works,
yeah,
then I think that sets you up better to understand what your score dispersion is going to be.
I absolutely agree. Totally agree. I think all of those things are very much a benefit to kind of be, because it goes hand in hand with what we were talking about before with the understanding of strokes game, short game versus long game. All of those things, I think they play into helping you set your expectations and build acceptance for when things are going a little bit wrong. Like if
Yeah,
you're having a bad day, and I should be aware that when I'm having a bad day and it looks like high 80s, nudging up to 90, that's
that's
mate,
part of it.
that's part of my spectrum.
Yep.
It's totally fine. It doesn't mean
Yep.
that I've lost my game or anything
Yeah.
that dramatic. It's just, it's one of those days it's going to happen.
Yep. Yep. No, I completely agree. Completely understand.
So I would suggest that we are 5 from 5 and that myth is busted.
Wow. 5 from 5. I'm impressed.
It's almost like we picked them deliberately.
Who would have thought it?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But Andy Walker, I think we wanted to get through 10. We're not getting through 10 tonight. I think
No.
5's a good place to stop, and we can call
Yep.
this part 1 of the series.
Yep. Yep.
Any thoughts?
I think we've done well.
Yeah, I think it's been a good chat. I'm going to enjoy that one on one of my drives. And Pilgrims,
But
love to hear your thoughts.
as in road drives, not drives on the golf course.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't listen to podcasts whilst I'm playing golf usually, and definitely not my
And
own.
I was going
How
to say,
weird.
not the missing link golf show.
How weird would that be?
Yes, yes, that would be a bit strange, but look, a lot of strange things happen in this world. So
I'm a strange guy, so you never know.
mm.
All right, Andy Walker. Anything else before we wrap up? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, pretty happy with that. 5 out of 5. I think, yeah, there's one thing that we need to do, and I think we deserve to do it, and that is to rock out, Pilgrims.
Done.